toned it down quite a bit. Made it so that there is not so much stuff to happen because I find that we're doing so much troubleshooting. We're losing at about 45 minutes per class in troubleshooting. So just due to that period of time being necessary, we're going to cover smaller chunks as we go forward. So the syllabus might change very slightly. Very slightly, not all that much. Actually, the scope of our project will likely change. We'll scale it down a little bit, but yeah. So last week we did the create and read routes and controller actions, but we didn't complete it. I believe we still had to do draft and publish filtering. I also said that I wanted to go over the views and actually discuss what's in the view, because obviously that will be confusing if you're just kind of glancing at it. That being said, we're going to build a couple of views today together anyways, so that will be helpful, hopefully. But there's a couple of pieces of housekeeping that we should do before we do that. One, I'm posting Lab 2, which will cover creding. So that's create, read, update, and delete. If you click on it, it actually tells you what you need to do. There's 5 different options for you to choose from. All you need is a single resource to cred to. I really don't care what that is. Those are just 5 suggestions. Don't try to do nested relationships or any of that type of stuff unless you feel very comfortable at doing those kind of things. The scope of this should be done by literally duplicating I'm going to call it WordPress, the WordPress project that we're doing, duplicating that and flipping out some of the names and then, kind of writing your own routes and then hand it in and call it a day. So it shouldn't take you very long. It should take you about 45 minutes to an hour tops. If it's going way past that, slow it down, back up. Yeah. And this is obviously in your groups, so make sure you do it in your groups. If you've added members to your group, you need to let me know right away, especially before I mark Lab 1, because it obviously affects them. Yeah, okay. That also leads us into the second piece, which I wanted to cover last week, but I completely forgot. Some of you have already seen this and asked me questions about it. This is the first part of your project, which is very similar to Lab 2, but this is this is step 1, which will cover all your node pieces that you need to cover. So that will be routing controllers, views, and models, right? So the whole MVC framework idea, setting up a server, getting it all started, getting it up to Heroku, or Azure, or whoever you're using for your deployment solution, and then handing me in your link in your GitHub repository for it. So that's the first chunk for the term, and then that will be expanded on in the next term after reading week with the React components and building out the whole front end view. So that'll be the second part. So for this part, you're going to choose an application. Hopefully you guys have already been talking about it with your groups, figuring out what you want to do. But there is some basic requirements. So you have to use Node.js and Express. Don't hand me in a PHP server with PHP code. And you may laugh, but I've had it happen. Completely had it happen. Because I'm not going to mark it. It has to be JavaScript, has to be Node.js and Express.js as a server, unless you come up with some other kind of server solution you want to use. I don't know, maybe you want to roll your own, that's totally fine. Just make sure I know in advance. Must have at least 2 resources, okay, with either second resource being a nested resource or an association set with the first resource. So next week, we're going to do an associated resource. We're going to build authors, and we're going to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We're going to make that an associated resource with a blog post, and then in the same aspect, we're going to build in authentication, but very super simple authentication, just straight up bcrypt type of authentication. I don't know if any of you have used bcrypt before. Has anybody used bcrypt in here? No? Okay, it's just simple one-way encryption that you basically have to validate your password against. That's the way it works. It's simple. So you're going to have at least 2 resources. One has to either be nested or it has to be associated. So Mongo supports both. Nested resources means that it's actually embedded right in the document of its parent. So when you actually retrieve its parent back, you actually have the nested resource right inside the same document. Whereas an associated, it means there's like a key sitting in there, just like you would with a SQL table, right? So, for example, you might have a parent relationship like sports teams, and then you might have players, right? And the players would associate to the sports teams. And the way that usually works is each of the players has a record to the parent sport team inside their own record, and that's how you create the association. Mongo's no different. You basically do the same idea. You would have a user and you would associate, or sorry, you'd have a blog and you would associate it with the user through the ID, which is the way we'll be doing it. But there's also nested resources, which some people like because you can use nested resources for things like tagging and stuff. So that's where the document is actually right inside the other document. So we'll take a look at both next week. But yes, you must have at least one of those. Your application has to abide by this structure. You need an app.js, or you can call it index.js or main.js. I don't care. You need an entry file, right? You need a routes.js. You need models, controllers, views, and routes. So once again, take the project we've been working on, duplicate it, because a lot of that configuration is already in there. And you're not really doing anything wrong, because if you were to use the Express generator, it would do that for you as well. It would just literally stub out everything we've been building week after week after week. So, and like I said before, most of the stuff I have to look up every time I go to redo it anyways, because you touch it once and then you don't touch it again for 6 months while you're working on one project. So you tend to forget all those pieces. All right, so your resource must have a route file in the routes. So in the routes directory, you have to have a route file for your resources, one per resource. You have to have a controller for each resource, and you'll need a model for each resource. Unless you're using a nested resource. No, even nested resources, you can still have a separated model for them. At least one of the resources must have a set of views. So it might sound weird. It might sound like, why wouldn't I have views for both? There is possible you wouldn't have views for both. Say you're building a, I don't know, like a products database, and you wanted to do tags. You might not necessarily have a view for tags, because in the view where you create the products, you might create like a little section that will create the tags as well, all within the same view. So it is potentially possible for you to only have one set of views. But you must have at least one set of views. I don't care if you use Pug, HTML, Haml, Mustache, Handlebars, whatever it is that you want to use as a templating engine is completely up to you. I imagine majority of you will use Pug. But just so you know that it's totally up to you. I don't care which template engine you use. All right, your application must have authentication, and all resource creation, editing, deletion must be authenticated actions. So you will have an authenticated part to it. So whether you do up a simple users table and that is one of your resources, I guess, does that count? Yeah, I guess that counts. If you want to do it that way, that's totally fine. But you have to have authentication, mostly just for your own protection, because this is going to be live on Heroku, right? So you don't want people just inserting whatever the heck they want into your database. So having basic authentication will stop that. Even if you just lock it down with a hard-coded password and give me the password so that I can access the route. Your application must be hosted, and the source code must be accessible in an online repository. So obviously you need to push it to GitHub or to Bitbucket or to Firebucket or whatever it is that you're using for an online repository. Dropbox, doesn't matter. Work in the groups you're defined in. Hand in working application. It's minus 10% if it doesn't work. If I have to go crawling through your app to figure out why it's not working, it is definitely minus 10%. All group members must contribute. So every group member must be an active part of this project. And I expect everybody to do a little bit of coding, a little bit of the view structure and stuff like that. Not just one person doing views, one person doing controllers, that kind of thing. Make sure everybody kind of mixes about. That way you guys get a good understanding of how it works and what you're actually building. And then provide a readme.txt that defines what each member did. Okay, so in the readme, I should be able to take a quick look and see what you did. Now, if you're in a group of one, the loneliest number, you don't need to hand in that readme, obviously. Okay, only the groups that have multiple group members need to hand in a readme. You cannot hand in work that is not your own. So if you find a whole Node Express project on the internets and you hand it in, I usually figure it out pretty quick, and then I'll bust you and we'll go through that whole embarrassing process of misconduct, which I don't want to do. And then hand in the blogging project as a submission. You have to do something different. So don't just take the thing we've been building for the last 6 weeks and hand it in and be like, all done, dude, because it doesn't work. All right. And then the rubric, I will put the breakdown of marks in there, or I might not. Yeah, I probably will. I'll put a breakdown of marks in there. The only reason why I get kind of iffy about that is people hyper-focus on things. They're like, oh my god, the app.js file is worth 40%. Oh, right? And they freak out. the thing is that I don't want you to freak out. I just want you to build your project, okay? The requirements are there. If you're missing requirements, then you will get less than 100%. If you do the requirements, you'll get 100%. I'm not like one of those goofy weirdo teachers that are like, you can't get 100% in this class, because that's stupid and pointless. However, you can achieve more. That's a big thing that I'm very a part of. If you do more, you think outside the box, you integrate things that we didn't talk about, you show me that you've learned, you've done some learning on your own, and you brought it into your project, then I will definitely give bonus marks, usually up to 10%, in addition to your project mark. So, all right, cool. Any questions about the project? No? Okay, you can always contact me on Slack, email, obviously, if you do have any questions, or in person if you see me wandering around, and I will happy to help you. Awesome, let's get started. Let's open up terminal first. Now, I'm noticing that I'm on the Git master branch, which leads me to believe we didn't create a part 3 branch, or did we? I'm going to find out real fast if we did. That would be a no. Yeah, we did not. Okay, so we definitely need to make a part 3 branch. Now, I know some of you are just working in master and quite content to do so. However, some of you are working on the branches from week to week, and that's totally cool as well. So this kind of leads us into a bit of a weird kind of situation where we have code locally that is not currently sitting on GitHub, right? And we want to create a branch to take that local code and put it on that branch and not accidentally shove it up to master, right? So we don't want to do a git add, git commit, because that will take our local code and put it up to master before we're even done doing our feature changes, right? So the way we can kind of see how things are progressing along, we can see that we have commits that aren't staged yet. So these are all git status. When we do git status, we can see that all of these haven't been committed yet, which is good. We don't want to commit them. Do not commit them yet. We can actually use a git command to take all of this and temporarily store it. And then what we'll do is it will clear our branch and make our branch nice and nice. And then we can move over to a new branch and then take that temporary storage and dump it in. And now it's sitting on the new branch, and that can be pushed up to GitHub and all the rest of it. So let's do this kind of step by step so that it's very simple and easy to work with. The first step we're going to do is create the branch. So let's jump over to GitHub real fast. And I'm pretty sure I'm in the correct GitHub. Yes. And then navigate to your blog repository. And under here, under branch, when you click on branch, you'll notice you have 3 branches. We're going to create a new one called part 3. So part-03. And we're going to click that button, create branch part 3. Yay, we have a part 3 branch. So now part 3 is going to be a duplicate of master. That's what happens. It takes master, because that's the branch we were on when we created the branch. It will duplicate its contents and create part 3. Yes, Tuna?
Is there a difference to make just the git branch part and make it do this?
They're exactly the same. So if you do it through the command line tool, it's exactly the same as doing it this way. What I have found, though, is that some students, when we do it through the git command tool, due to permission issues and stuff, they have issues creating them. This is just straightforward, guaranteed to work kind of thing, yeah. But yeah, if you're comfortable creating them through the git command line tool, go for it, for sure. All right, so once you have this, the first step we need to do in terminal is to actually fetch, because right now our local repository doesn't know anything about remote. It doesn't currently have any idea of what's happened on remote. It is blind. So if we do git fetch, that will actually retrieve down branch 3. And now if you type in git branch, you should see part 2, part 3. For some reason, I'm not seeing part 2, part 3, which is leaving me a little bit suspicious that something weird has happened. The next way for us to know for sure is to check it out. But before we do that, we want to take our current contents that we have, the code that we have, and we want to basically store it in a temporary stash. And the git command for that is git stash. Hit enter. It's going to take everything currently on that branch and it's going to shove it into a stash. Next thing you want to do is you want to check out the part3 branch. So it's git checkout part-03. What? I don't want to remove them. I want them to be where they were. That's really weird. One second, I can't remember how to track those files. All right. We might have untracked files. Don't do this to your branch because I can reverse it if I need to. Okay, so we're going to wind up with merge conflicts. You know what? I don't want to have that happen, so because that will be a pain, and that will definitely take tons and tons of time to fix. I don't want to do that. Let's just get stash. Uh-oh. This is one of those times where things just kind of don't work out so well. Hopefully this is not all screwy. Give me one moment and I'll see if I can get this to just work. Okay, just out of curiosity, how many of you already checked out part 3? A few of you? Okay. Before you do anything else, go back and do a git checkout of master. I don't know why we have conflicts, and I don't want to find out for 40 different reasons. Once you're into master, do git stash apply and hit enter. And what that will do is take the stuff we just stashed and reapply it back to your branch. I'm not going to do it because it's not going to do anything. Now I got merging conflicts. Hopefully you don't have conflicts. Did anybody get conflicts? Okay, that's a good sign. Sometimes I friggin' hate git. All right. Now that you've done that, we'll just push it to master. It's fine. Do a git add dot. Do a git commit dash m with a comment. Once you've done that, do a git pull so that you can pull anything currently on master, and then do a git push, and that will push your changes up. Now, Heroku's going to grab those, and it's going to apply them. And Heroku will likely break, because I think we're missing other pieces we need. So we'll find out in a bit. It's not a big deal. All right, so now that that's done, why don't we run no daemon while we're in here, or npm start, and we'll see if we have any issues, which it looks like we do, or I do. You probably don't, but I do. I have an unexpected token, which God knows why. Oh, that's because, yeah, I know why. All right. So in the process, if you ever do a merge or anything like that, and you get something like a merge conflict, this is what it looks like. So you see this weird little double line thing, and there's like the squiggly line here. What that's basically saying is that this code currently conflicts with this code. There's an issue between these two code blocks, and you need to resolve this for this to be okay now, right? And so in order to do that, I have to actually go through, read all of these different pieces, figure out which pieces were correct and which pieces were incorrect, and remove the incorrect pieces. The good thing is it's actually not that hard, because I can easily see what's gone wrong. A lot of these pieces still need to be in here. Like, for example, I have a mongoose connection up here, and I have a mongoose connection down here. So one of these is obviously not correct. So I'm going to remove the second one that's not needed in there. Notice I have express required again, which is also not needed in there. That's body parser. Did we do body parser? We must have. Okay, good. Let's get body parser in there. Our views are okay by the looks of it. Routes look okay. Nope, got two sets of routes. That's not good. Already did path, don't need another path. Those are all garbage. And that looks okay, except for now I've got two sets of everything. So we don't need all of those. Yep, those are gone. That looks good. I'll save and just double check with no daemon to make sure that I'm still okay. No, I have an unexpected token, but it tells me exactly where it is. It says it's in my routes.js4 file, so I'll go correct that real fast. And again, you can see it's just a ton of duplicate stuff is really what the issue is here. Also, I'm missing a route file. I am completely missing the blog routes. Is it blogs routes or blog routes? I don't remember. No help? Thanks. I'll call it blog routes. There we go. Let's check that again. This time it's on the blog's controller line 3. Oh yeah, that sucks. That's missing like all of our work. All right, not going through that. It's the joys of doing this twice in a week. Okay. Somebody do me a favor that's on Slack, and can you please send me the current state of our blog's controller on Slack? I'll show you where you can paste it for me. So just under the S19 COMP-2068, if you click the little plus sign and choose create new code or text snippet and just drop me one in there, that would be great. And then I don't have to rebuild the whole blog thing from scratch. Speaking of which, we need Lesson plan. All right. Who's on Slack, just out of curiosity? Cool, thank you, Beth. Go. Wait, why do we have errors? All right, I'll deal with that in 1 second. All right, I got some username errors as well. Which is very weird. That's likely due to my app.js being slightly different. Oh, DB URI, DB user, and DB pass. Just 1 second. It's all correct. Oh, I see. Cool, I'm up. Okay. Awesome. So I won't do stashing for a while. Obviously, it creates issues between jumping between two classes. It creates massive conflicts for Sean. All right, so I think we finished off. We had index, show, drafts, publish. No, we had index and show. We created one, right? We were able to create one. The only thing we didn't have was drafts and published, I believe. So I can actually see that in the controller. Okay, so if that's the case, we should all be able to load up our site at localhost 4000. Do you guys have this navigation that's up here? And it looks exactly like that? Like your page looks like mine? Okay, cool. Oh yeah, you've got like the list instead? Yeah, we'll fix yours at the break. All right, so if we go to new blog, I've got an error. You guys should be able to get there. Why do I have an error? Well, the biggest reason probably is because I'm likely missing a route. Yep, so I'm missing the routes, so I need to make sure I have those. That's because we didn't actually quite get there on Thursday. So Thursday's class is quite a bit further behind than you guys. What's that? Yeah, it's usually because of having to go through and do troubleshooting and stuff. It tends to take up so much time. Getting a refused connect. Can't find routes blogs, so I'm missing the actual blog file. So under my routes. Yeah, do you want to throw it? No, it should be blogs. Blogs.js. Do you want to throw me that file too? Thank you. It just has so much stuff in it. Awesome. And that's the model, but I will need that too. Can you throw me the routes/blogs.js file? But I will need the model as well, because I think, oh no, I've got it. Oh, looks like we actually got the model done. That's good. Thank you. There we go. Spacing. to the routes.js file. I'll have to make sure that that's in there, which it already is, so we're good. Awesome. Do we have any conflicts? No. It doesn't like the way those are formatted for some bizarre reason. Yeah, settle down. Why is it always freaking out about semicolons? All right. Seek. Okay. That looks good. And there it is. So, bam. Let's just make sure I can create one. Test. Test. Submit. Yay! We have test. All right. So when we finished, we were able to create a blog. Create a new blog. One thing I didn't show you, though, is we actually already have the show view as well. So each one of these blogs, like this is the index page, which gives you a list of all the blogs that you have, right? So that's the purpose of index. It should give you a list of all the resources you currently have. However, if we want to actually see just one of these, if you click on them, it will navigate to the show, and you should see the show view for it. So maybe we didn't build show. I'm thinking that maybe we didn't. Otherwise, it spins. When it spins, it means it's getting to the blog controller. It's currently sitting here in show, but it can't render what the view is, and sure enough, it can't because we're missing the logic. So let's create the logic for show, and then we'll create the logic for drafts and published. Sound like a deal? Alrighty. All right, so the idea of show is just to simply show one single blog post, right? That's the only thing we want to show, just one blog post. And if you remember the way our route is designed for that, our route actually has a bound parameter. Our bound parameter is ID, which means when the user wants to see a singular blog post, they actually make that request for that particular ID. And we can see that in the URL that is actually passed. I'll go back. If you hover over one of these, at the bottom it will show you the URL that it's requesting. You'll notice that each one of these has a slightly different URL, but the only thing that's changing on each URL is the actual end piece beside blogs, which is the ID. It's the identifier that Mongo assigns to that particular document when it gets written to the database. So we can actually use that as an identifier for us to be able to go into our blog post and retrieve out that particular blog post just by the identifier that's currently listed there. So when we go to show, what we want to do is we want to use that identifier, pick it up, and be able to actually use it to make the search. And the way we actually grab that identifier, under our blogs.js file, you'll notice that we have this :ID in our route. And what the :ID stands for is it's known as a bound parameter. It works like regex. Basically, when the path comes in that the user is requesting, it fills up this whole location, so it'll be /localhost /4000/blogs, which we're getting from routes.js right here, and then /our route. So first it's going to try to match new to our route. Nope, that doesn't equal new. It's some weird random string. It doesn't match drafts. It doesn't match published. It's not this because there's stuff after it. So it knows for a fact it's not this. And then it gets to this point and it says, okay, no, this thing matches up. This is a placeholder for this current value. So what I'm going to do is when I call the blogs controller show, I'm actually going to add this as a query parameter and pass it off to the blog show. And then in blogs, in the controller action, we now have access to that from our request object. We can actually grab that bound parameter and use it to search through our blogs posts to see where we can find our blog. So it's definitely one of those things that example makes it a lot easier to understand. So the first thing we want to do is access our actual blog model. Once we have the blog model, we want to call a command on the blog model to actually do the find. And the find we're going to do is called find by ID. And find by ID does literally what it sounds like it does. It finds by the ID, right? So the next thing it wants the actual ID itself. And we can get that by doing request, which is our request object, params, which are any parameters that have been sent, not only through the query string path, but also bound parameters that we're looking for or listening to, which in this scenario, we're listening for bound parameters. And the bound parameter is called .id. And it's getting that from the bound parameter that we passed in here. So whatever name you call in here, so if you change this to Bob, then you would be doing request.params.bob in order to get it, because it's a bound parameter. Once this is done, this actually returns back a promises. I know it's been a while since we looked at promises, but it returns back a promise. And promises come back in two flavors. They come back with a resolution, or they come back with a rejection. If we only have a .then, it will literally blanket catch both of those. It will catch the rejection and it will catch the resolution. If we want to divide the logic up so that a success happens or we catch an error, then we need to also use .catch. What that will do is it will make the resolution go to the .then command and the rejection go to the .catch command. So if we do .then, and we also add a .catch, that's the best way to define that current setup. So then we'll catch the promise as resolution, and catch will catch the promise's rejection. Both of these take one argument. Does anybody remember what that argument is? What structure it is? Starts with a C. Yep, callback. Takes a callback, and we're going to use arrow functions because, I mean, why not? They're fun. So the first thing is when the promise actually, when Mongoose turns around and actually fulfills the promise, if it's a resolution, it will actually take the record it found and pass it to the callback as an argument. So we can catch that. So we're going to catch that in our blog, our parameter. You can call it whatever you want. You don't have to call it blog, but this is the standard convention, to just call it by its singular form because we're only getting one record back. And then using the arrow, we pass that to a block. In the block, all we need to do now is actually render the show with our blog post in it, right? So we do that by doing res.render. We tell it where that view is, so it's in blogs show. The folder views is automatically assumed. And then we pass it a second argument, which is just an object. And does anybody remember what this object contains? Locals. Does anybody remember what locals are? No? Locals are variables that are scoped to the view. So we can actually create variables here and then send them off to our view. So now they're available in the view, but they're only scoped to the view. So you don't have to worry about them bleeding outside of the view. So we're going to do two. We're going to have a title, which, you know, why don't we be a little personal? We can make it blog.title, right? Just make it the title of the actual blog itself. That way it's a little bit personalized. Nice user experience. And then the other one feels redundant, but we're going to pass the blog in as well. What will happen is when the locals hit the view, they get ripped out into actual just variables, just plain old variables. And then they're now become available to you as the variable name. Now I've already created the view for you. It's under your views folder, under blogs, and you should see there's a show.pug in there. Anybody still typing that out, just out of curiosity? No? All right, let's jump over to that view so we can see it. So it's the show pug under blogs. So this, like our other views, extends our layout, right? So we're just extending the layout. Everything below block content will be plugged into the layout's block content location. This .container is just a handy class that's given to us by Bootstrap that we can use. which will basically just push everything in and immediately add 15 pixel margins to each side, plus only scope the content to be 80% of the page. That's all being handled by our Bootstrap framework. Dot container is literally just a CSS class. The reason why it appears as dot container in here is because Pug allows us to quickly add classes and treats everything as a div. So to this translates into, don't write this out though. That's what that will translate into. So when Pug actually goes through the template engine and it builds out the template, it's going to convert dot container into a div with the class container, right? Header will become header, right? H1 will become H1 with the blog title in it. Small will become small, div will become div. I'm sure you kind of get the understanding now of what's happening. The other thing to note is that when something is nested, it becomes nested in that thing. So this actually will have header in it. H1 will be inside the header. The small will be inside the header. This div will contain the blog content inside itself. So they immediately get nested to inside whatever they are tabbed into. Which, I mean, you guys have caught on to the tabbing thing pretty quick. I've had some students not catch on to the tabbing thing, but most of you have caught on to the tabbing thing. We're going to build a few views today, so you'll get to understand how this whole thing's working out pretty quick. Cool. All right, so if we jump back over to here, now if we click on one of these, it should go somewhere, but I get blog is not defined in mine. I have a funny feeling it is because, yeah, I'm grabbing the wrong thing. So I can actually figure that out. It's in the blogs controller. I'm requiring the model's blog. I have blog.js. That's because blog is lowercase. I want it to be uppercase. So give me 1 second to correct all my blogs. I mean, I'm all for the lowercase though, Bethany. That's I'm definitely for it. I'm just so used to writing it with capitals. All right. I mean, you can switch them if you want. They're totally fine as lowercase. You do you. I'm just going to jump back over to Google Chrome. I should be able to refresh and see it now. And sure enough, there it is. Draft. Man, this content block sucks. Can't wait for the WYSIWYG editor. Proud member for life. That's nice. Yeah. Hashtag WYSIWYG editor. My wife's making me a shirt that says proud member of the WYSIWYG club. Does anybody know what WYSIWYG stands for? Exactly. What you see is what you get, right? That's a good thing. Oh, forget you. All right. Okay, cool. So now we've got those two pieces. The last pieces that we need, and then we'll take a break, are the drafts and the published. Drafts and published are identical to the way index is. The only difference is it will allow us to filter them down. So instead of just blanketing out every single type of post into a list, you can actually thin them down to just draft posts or just published posts, which makes sense, right? So like if you're, for example, if you're writing your Hootsuite schedule, right? Maybe you do Hootsuite schedule or co-schedule. What's happening? All right. So if you're doing your Hootsuite schedule, your co-schedule schedule, if you're those type of marketing type people, you want only your published posts. So you want to know which blog posts are already been published, and then you can take those and write them into your schedule. If you've got drafts, then that means you've got some stuff to finalize. Maybe you have content writers that are writing up drafts, and now you've got to go through those drafts and actually finalize them. Then you can easily tell which ones are still in draft mode and which ones are still in actually published mode, right? Makes perfect sense. Filtering is filtering. It's the most common task for web developers since the beginning of web development, right? The ability to actually filter down lists even further into subsections. So we're going to add two pieces of filtering. We're going to add drafts and published, which will actually filter it down. However, we get to use the same view. And the reason why we get to use the same view as index is because if you look at index, all index is doing is passing a group of blogs as an array back. It doesn't care that the blogs are drafts or published. It's just accepting them back as blogs, which means our view will support any array of blogs no matter how we decide to filter them. And we can use that to our advantage because we can even do date picking, where we only select blogs between 2 date periods and send those back. So now you've got a reduced section of blogs. Or we only want blogs from a certain author, so that we only get those blogs back from that particular author. So this gives us a lot of flexibility by just only accepting an array of blogs and being dynamic. All right, so cool. We are going to create our draft and published. So the logic for draft and published, the first thing we want to do is just make sure we actually have the routes. So let's jump over to blogs.js. I'm pretty sure we already put the routes in. Looks like we did. So we've got /drafts and /publish. So these are hard-coded routes. We could make these drier by doing /status. If we did /:status, then whatever they choose would be a bound argument to the parameter, and we could use that to do the lookup. However, I think we'll just leave it like this just for simplicity. If you want to do it as an extra challenge to yourself, go for it. Yes, Tuna?
Also, I see the same structure for the API, making of the API. So.
Oh, these actual route structures?
Not the, they were not giving as a role in here. We were giving in the controller. So and we'd be giving the post or the get, decide on the which one it's going to be, and then give the role.
Yeah, like the thing is though, is that bound parameter, we would have to funnel it through one particular method and then use that one method. But you are right, we can reduce the controller down too.
Do you know the plus or pros or cons about it? That directly give this controller or making them as an API?
When we do make it an API, we will be, yeah. We're going to do that for when we do the React side. So this will only ever deliver whatever our API endpoints are. We might dry it up at that point and actually just, instead of having index drafts and published, we'll just have an index view that will resolve to whatever our filters are. I don't know. It really depends on how slow that goes. So we'll see. But yeah, you're right. These will be API endpoints. Yeah. Okay, so under the blogs controller, under drafts, and actually I think we can even, yeah, you see, Tuna, now you're in my head. You could even copy the index logic entirely if you want to. Actually, you know what? We'll type it out. We got time. Like, we really don't have a lot to cover today. So we're going to do blog so that we're referencing the model. This time, instead of find by ID, we want all of the records that match a certain protocol. So we're going to do find, like so. That will get back all of the records. Next, we're going to use a helper method. The helper method is a query helper that we built inside the blog. That was a while ago. Do you guys remember building that? Probably not. I mean, it was a whole week ago. So let's jump over to models blog. Oh, I don't have it in here, so I'm assuming we didn't build it. So that would be why you don't remember it. Haha. Is there egg on my face? All right. What's that? You did build the helpers?
I think so.
Okay, well then Bethany didn't build the helpers. You did build a helper? Didn't you send me this blog thing? Oh, I didn't copy yours.
It's not my fault, Sean.
It is not your fault. It was never your fault. It was not your fault that I erased my whole repository. Here, I will copy this, and then we'll explain it instead of having to write it out all over again. All right, so we have query helpers. Query helpers are fantastic. Query helpers allow us to basically scope our queries down to a set of information, right? So instead of doing a query that is find and then passing it the credentials that we want to find by, which it would be this part right here, we can actually wrap that into a method, and then we just call the method. So we can do blog find dot drafts, and it will literally run this and return back whatever the result set is from it. Or we can do blog find dot published and do the same thing and return back that set. What's really cool though is you can continually chain them. So you could do blogs.find.drafts, right? And then bring back all those drafts, .date range from .to, and do those, and it will just keep filtering them down and returning back the original result set over and over and over again as you filter them down, which is usually the common concept. I think we will build a date range ability at some point, just to make things a little simple. All right, cool. So that's our two query helpers, and the way those get used, we have to call blog.find, which will literally return back all of the blogs. Every single blog we have will come back in that result set. Next, we're going to filter them down by doing blog.drafts with a set of brackets. And then after that, we just want to be able to catch our success, and that's a weird word. We want to be able to deal with the success and then catch the error. There we go, that's better. Then, catch. So both of these, as before, take a callback. So in the drafts one, I'm going to do drafts, because that's what we're getting back. I mean, you could literally call it anything. You can call it blogs if you really wanted to. And then I'm going to render the blogs index. And I'm going to pass the second argument, which will be our locals. Oh, not published, drafts. Helps if I pay closer attention. And there we go. So once again, blog.find, find will return back every single blog post we have. .drafts, the result set from find gets passed into drafts, and then we thin it down to only return those blogs that have the status of draft. That whole result set gets passed into this callback as an argument, which we capture under the word drafts and send it into our callback. We render with a set of locals, title, and blogs. We're rendering the index view because the index view only cares that it actually gets a list of blogs. It doesn't really care what those blogs are, right? So as long as we give it an array of blogs, it's happy. And then once we're finished, we exit out. However, we have to deal with the catch, right? Because we may get an error. So let's deal with that error. Just console.log, some lovely dirty backticks. Error. There we go. And I mean, is that a good way to deal with an error? What's going to happen if we ever actually hit the error? It's going to spin forever because we're never going anywhere. We don't redirect. We don't route to anywhere else. We're not rendering anything. So it's literally just going to spin for error. And we can actually go check where the error is because it will be showing up in our console. However, your user has gotten nothing. They don't know what's wrong. They just know the page is just loading forever and they'll just sit there. We're going to render that today. We're going to fix that today. You can do console.error as well. It will actually throw differently in the browser. It will go red and you can actually see it. And yeah, there's also console.info and console.warn. And they do, all four throw differently. Yeah. It does, and it also makes it better to deal with when you're doing logging. So if you were actually logging out, because it's all STD error and STD in, right? So it's STD out. Because it actually filters them down into those categories, you can fund them into a logging system like Vibrato, or there's tons of them. There's tons and tons of logging systems. And then you can actually use those as ways to filter down your logs or search your logs and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, because published is identical to drafts, we're going to cheat, copy, paste, and then just change some words around. So the .drafts beside find becomes published. The drafts argument could be left, but I mean for readability, let's change it to published. The title, well, we definitely want to change that because otherwise it'd be very confusing. And then because we're actually passing the published to the blog's local, we need to change that one as well to published. And then it can get passed. And that is it for those two. All right. Everybody still typing? Ready for this? Let's do it. Jump over. The links are already there. If you click on blogs, you should get the index of all of your blogs. If you click on published, there should be nothing there because we don't have any blogs that have actually been published. Let's test it out though. Let's create a new blog. My published blog, my published content. And I'm going to change my status from draft to publish. I'm going to click submit. Shows up in my blogs, but now when I go to blogs published, I can only see it. It is the only one currently available. And if I switch from blogs to drafts, I can only see the blogs that have a draft status. Quick and simple filtering. Now what we could do, we could make it so that our status is a link that links to either drafts or links to publish, depending on whether it's draft or published. So that way you could always click on your status and filter it down directly, right? Which is also an option. Cool. Any questions about any of that? No? Okay. So we'll take a 10-minute break. Then we're going to do edit, update, and delete, and get those all done and out. Sound like a plan? Cool. Nice. All right, let's take 10 minutes. Housekeeping thing that I need to go through. So I moved our lesson plans. They're in the same spot. However, I made it so it's a little simpler now. So if you do navigate to the root of the site, let me just log out. If you navigate to the root of the site, you will hit this page. If you click on this thing, you can see a list of what we're learning and what its description is. And then you can just click on whatever lesson you want to click on. So I build my lessons, I don't know, I'll probably start adding things to my next lesson tomorrow. And you can actually live check it. And you can actually see the progression of that lesson as it goes through the week till finally when it gets delivered on Monday. So you can kind of get ahead of the curve if you want to, so to speak. But anyways, that's how you access those. Alrighty. Our next step. I'm at 10% on my iPad. Do you think it'll last long? Yeah, probably not.
You have a charger?
I do not, but that's fine. We'll make do for now, and then I'll switch over to the Georgian thing. All right, so we want to be able to edit, update, and delete a resource because we currently can't edit, update, or delete. So we're going to want to add these actions to our blog's controller and stuff. So the process is always the same. The process is always the same. We always add controller actions, we add the routes, and we add the views. Every time, ooh, yes. Sounded a lot like the way I say, ooh, cake. Yeah. That's a good amount of cables. I trust my laptop. Mintent does not trust my laptop, but I trust my laptop. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Okay, so whenever we want to add a new action, we just have to go through that whole process. We add an action, we add a route, and if it requires a view, we add a view to it. And that's the cool thing. Like the structure that we currently have, and we're actually adding 3 more new pieces to our app.js today, which will give us even more control and capability. But for the most part, it's always those same simple pieces, just routes, controller actions, and views. Very simplistic. So anytime you add a new resource on, you're just adding those pieces on. Well, you'll need a model if you're adding a resource, but if we're just adding 2 existing resources, it's just route, controller, and view. So to illustrate that, Just going to close out these things because I don't need all of this open. So I need the blogs.js open, and I need a blogs controller open. Now, the three pieces we're going to add are edit, update, and destroy. That's just what it's called. You can call it delete if you want to, but I don't know. Destroy just seems to be more final. Out of those three actions, how many have views? So edit, update, and destroy. How many people say 2? How many people say 1? Okay, so those of you that said 1, you're exactly right. It's only one action. Destroy should have one little counteractive piece. It should prompt that that is something you actually want to do, right? Because it's too easy to click on delete and then go, oh crap, that's not what I wanted to do. And you can imagine if you had this great big blog post and you deleted it, oh my God, right? Like that would suck. So there are ways we can deal with that. We can deal with it by adding in JavaScript that actually prompts and verifies they want to actually destroy it. Or we can even integrate something like paranoia. What paranoia is it instead of deleting a record from the database, it does something called soft deletes, where it just makes the record not show up. That's another option. But the record still exists, and you can go get it if you really need it back, right? So a lot of big companies will do soft deleting or paranoia. We at G-Shift do paranoia. Amazon probably does paranoia as well because they can actually retrieve back records, but they also do database backups too, which is a big thing too. All right, so we're going to do neither of those things today, but we will implement a delete prompt for next week. Okay, cool. So the first action we need, we might as well stub out all three actions. So open up your blogs controller, and we'll just stub out the three actions that we're actually going to use. So they all are written the same way, exports, dot, and whatever the action name is. So the first one will be edit. And they all receive the same parameters. So request and response objects. Hash rocket. Ooh, and actually I'm going to write this all on one line for right now. And now the cool thing is once you've written that, you can actually just duplicate those 2 more times because the format is roughly the same. It's only the name that changes. This one will be update, and this one will be destroy. All right. So I'll plug our logic in there in a second. Now our edit is a little different than our new because our edit actually, when you edit, you're editing an existing record. So obviously we're going to have to do a database call, get the record, and send it back to the view. So it's a little different than our new. However, there is a commonality between new and edit, and that's the form we use. The form is identical for both scenarios because the form contains the same fields. So what we can do is we can actually use partials to our benefits, create a form that is abstracted from new and edit, and if it contains a value, it will auto-populate, and if it doesn't contain a value, it will remain blank. But then we're writing one form, we're maintaining one form, we're styling one form, right? That's it. No multiple stylings, no multiple crap, right? So we're actually going to wind up having 2 views in total. We're going to have an edit view, and then we're going to have a form view. And the form view will be where we actually abstract the form logic for new and edit and put it into its own little location. So under blogs, I would like you to create 2 new files under the views blogs. The first one will be edit.pug, and then the second one will be form.pug. And we will actually write these ones out this time. I'll show you the little picture in a minute. All right, so for the actual edit page, edit is going to first extend our layout, right? What the heck did you do that for? Now, because we're extending the layout and we want to make sure that we yield our content where the block content goes, we need to put block content in. Not blog content, block content. And then everything after this point needs to tab in, because it's all a child of block content. So we're going to utilize .container because .container will automatically space our stuff in properly and make sure it's available and look nice and pretty and bootstrappy. So we're going to do .container as our class. We're going to have a header and an h1. Okay. The h1 is actually going to utilize the blog post we get back from the controller, and we're going to pull the title out so we can have a nice personalized title that says edit this blog post, right? With the actual blog post name in it. And the only way we can do that is by telling Pug that we want to interpolate this expression, this JavaScript expression that we're going to provide afterwards. So the way we do that, we have two options. We can do a dash. What a dash does is it says just execute this JavaScript and don't do anything else. What an equal sign does, an equal sign says execute this JavaScript and whatever the return value is, call to string on that and spit it out as a string object. So if you wind up returning undefined, then you'll get undefined as a literal word, right? So the equal sign is what we're going to use because we're playing it off of this h1. And what this syntax means is I want an h1 tag, and inside it, I want this interpolated JavaScript. Right? The JavaScript is extremely simple. A couple of dirty backticks. And we're going to write edit, and then inside an interpolated block, we're going to have blog.title. I mean, I'm going on week 5, and I still absolutely love Synthwave. This theme is still awesome. You can't get it on your Mac?
I could, but it keeps giving me errors.
Yeah, it will, because there's a whole bunch of crap you got to do to get it to work. Maybe one day, if we have some time, I'll help you get it set up and running. Yeah. Yep. It does, but then if you want the glowiness, you have to get CSS enabled on it.
Yeah.
That's the tricky part. Yeah, you can get the theme really easily, but not the rest of it. Okay, so the next piece is going to go in line with header, and this is important. These tabbing is super important because the tabbing says take this thing and nest it in this parent, right? So the next line is actually in line with header, not nested into header, and that is just a simple div. And in here, we're going to include a partial. And the partial we're going to include is form.pug. And I'm using one dot to reference it because it's in the same directory that I'm in. Now, incidentally, our edit is going to, our new is going to look like this as well, because our new is going to utilize that same form, right? So both new and edit are going to utilize the partial form. It's going to be different how the partial form reacts depending on which one is actually being utilized, but they're going to utilize the same form. So before we modify the new, what we should do is jump over to new, and we're just going to drag a cursor up to the beginning of form so that that is all highlighted. And then on your keyboard, if you're on a Mac, you're going to hit Command X. If you're on a Windows machine, Control X. And if you're in Linux, it's Control X as well. And that cuts it. Okay. And then obviously, we're going to jump over to form, where I wrote this content that I didn't want in this place. I'm going to cut that out, put that under here. And then, thank God for Alfred, because now I can easily grab the last thing I copied and pasted and put that under form where it should go. And then make sure you save everything. Now, when you're under form, when you paste, the word form is going to be really far over to the left, and everything else is going to be tabbed in like 8 spaces over. You want to bring those all up so they're just within your tab amount. So if you're using 4 spaces, you want to make sure they're within the 4 spaces. If you're using 2, then you want to make sure they're within 2. I kind of prefer 2 for web development just because the lines get so long dealing with 2 spaces is much easier than dealing with 4, 4, 4, and the next thing you know it, you're way the heck off the page, right? I like to try to keep everything within a nice margin line. Now, obviously under new, we need to include this form under new, right? So if you jump over to edit, just grab that include.pug form thing. Then jump over to new and paste that in place. And then that's it. That's new, ready to go. Right? So you should have new, form, and pug. Or edit, I mean. Cool. Does anybody need me to jump back to any other pages? No? We're good? Alrighty. All of these should be active and working. The new should be active and working. So you should be able to jump over to your browser, to our actual application, go to new blog, and it should still work. You should see the form there. The form should not be gone. So if you did everything correctly, the form should be there. If you have a Hamel error, or sorry, a pug error, read the pug error. If you can't resolve your pug error, then let me know and I will help you. But read your pug error.
Pug error, but I draft and publish whenever the select box.
Your drafts and publish are outside of the select box?
Like that status.
Yeah. Oh, these statuses are no longer inside the select box? I bet you I know exactly what's wrong. You do have a pug error. These are tabbed too far over.
Yeah, it's what I tabbed everything.
Yeah. So chances are your options are no longer children. They're rocking it outside the house on their own. Yeah. Need to get those children back under select. Alrighty, cool. Edit's not going to work because we don't have a route for it. And there's no way to get there. So there's nothing we can do about that yet. We also don't have a controller action for it. So again, it's not going to work. That's not also the only problem. Our form will be blank when we go to access it because it's going to be missing a lot of key components that we need. So let's render all of this. First thing, let's create the routes we need. That makes the most amount of sense. Once we have the routes, we'll go and create the controller action we need. And then we'll go back and fix the form so it actually utilizes the blog post that we're going to provide it. I think it's a good order of steps. So under blogs.js, we're going to create the edit. And it doesn't matter where we do this in line. I like to move them properly, but it's fine. We're going to do router, and edit is going to be which type of HTTP method, a get or a post? Yeah, it's going to be a get. Some nice dirty backticks. A slash. A colon ID is a bound parameter. Right? And the word edit. So again, we're doing the bound parameter where we actually go and grab that particular blog post, but edit makes it different than show because edit says I want to edit this thing, right? And then we're going to point that at blogs controller dot edit and save that. So now that's pointing at the blogs controller edit. We know that that will work. Now we just need to dump the logic into the actual edit controller action, which will render our view for us. So we're going to do that next. So if you go over to the blogs controller JS, is anybody still typing just before I switch over? No? Okay. I'm going to put my cursor in those curly braces, split those guys apart. Next, I'm going to access my blog, and this logic is going to look exactly the same as the show logic because it is the same as the show logic. It's blog.find by ID. Takes one argument, which is request.params.id, which is getting back from the bound parameter. We're going to give it a .then and a .catch. And I mean, all the logic in this particular scenario is identical to the show, but we can actually go through and just replace some of the words with edit, right? So if you want to jump ahead and just copy and paste show, that's totally fine. So this is going to point to this callback. This callback is going to do a good old res render. And it's going to res render blog / edit. And it's going to take a locals argument. And in the locals argument, we're going to have a title. And I mean, why don't we personify or personalize the title? Edit $blog.title, comma, blog, blog. And then we'll just copy this console error log thing at the top here under the catch and paste it in because it's exactly the same. And that's what it'll look like. So what's going to happen is it's going to go and find the request params ID. As long as it's there, it will actually find the blog post. It's going to pass the blog post as an argument to our then callback, which will be passed in as a local. We're going to render the blog's edit and give back a nice personalized title. That's the title that's going to appear at the top of the page. Now, incidentally, where we actually wrote edit blog title under the edit.pug, we could take that out and just put the word title in there. And if we did that, it would still work. All right. Anybody still typing? No? Good? Good. Okay, cool. Let's jump over to our, where was I going to go now? Our Google Chrome. And let's just make sure all of this is still working. So in order to get to the edit, if we go to blogs, we have no way to get there. We have no links currently to actually get to where we need to go. So we should probably edit our index so that we have a wonderful link to where we actually need to get to. And the index changed. So if you jump back over to Visual Studio Code, go to Views, Blogs, index.pug. I don't know why all these are so close to each other. There we go. We're going to add a new th. And this is just where we're going to put our actions. You don't even have to give it a title. I mean, we can. Why don't we give it a title? Call it actions. And then we're going to give it a new TD. Not an STD, just a TD. And then we're going to tab in and, yeah, we're not going to give it an STD. We're going to give it a child. There we go. Ref. Some nice backticks. /blogs. /blurgs. There we go. And we're going to do a string interpolation. We're going to pass in the blurg ID. No, I wrote blurg. I didn't mean to. I was goofing. Now, if I leave it like that, where's it going to go? That's right. It's going to go to show. So I need to add. What do I need to add, Adrian? /edit. There we go. And then we need to give it a word. I mean, we could give font awesome in here, but I feel like that's just overkill for right now. So let's just do edit. We'll embed font awesome next week and actually put icons in. So everybody likes a good icon. I'll see if I can find my registered paid version, and then you can have thousands of icons. All right. Okay, so we've got edit. Save it. Jump over to this wonderful thing. Hit refresh. Now you've got edit buttons. Yes. Click on one of the edits, and it takes us to the page. But there's some issues here. One, I can't see the title at all because it's buried, and that's because of the silly Bootstrap Navigation. So Bootstrap's navigation is actually causing an issue with our title. It's there, it's hidden. It's actually hidden underneath the stupid navigation. So why don't we jump over to our styles sheet, which you'll find under Assets, Style Sheets, Styles.css. Scroll to the very bottom. And we're just going to add in a new rule, .container. And dot container is going to have margin top of 60 pixels. And then save that. And what that's literally going to do is just put 60 pixels at the top of our container objects. Then if you refresh your page, you should see the actual title now come down, pop down. All right, I'm going to jump over, refresh. Yay, edit my super awesome first blog post. By the way, feel free to style these and make them more personable and your own, right? I think personable is the wrong word here. Personalize it. All right, we have a problem. I mean, we could use this as an edit, but that'd be super frustrating, right? Because I don't know what content was there before, so how do I know what to write back in again, right? And with a blog post, blog posts can get pretty lengthy, like thousands of words, right? So because of that, I definitely want to see it so that I can edit whatever it is I particularly want to edit. All right, so let's jump back over to our Visual Studio Code. In our blog's controller, we're passing this wonderful blog. We can actually use that to our advantage. One, we can detect whether it's even there, right? And if it's there, then we will actually show certain information. If it's not there, then we'll just move on with our merry day. So let's go ahead and edit our blog, our form, so that it actually utilizes this. And there's a couple of pieces we're going to need. So the first piece, just underneath the form itself, the form title, I'm going to create some space there. And I'm going to use Pugs Conditional Logic. Pugs Conditional Logic is simple as typing if, and then what you want to if, your conditional. So I'm going to say if blog, which means if this local variable exists, because if blog is undefined, false, null, or 0 even, then it won't work, right? Because it'll return back falsely. Then inside there, and nested inside there, I'm going to create a new input. I'm going to give it a type of hidden, a name of ID, and a value equal to the blog.id. So that way, I can send my controller, when I go to post this update, I can send the controller the identifier, and the controller can use the identifier to find the blog that I'm actually editing. That way, all my fields remain post fields. Next, I need to edit these guys. I'm going to collapse my sidebar so you can easily see. I need to edit these inputs so that they have a value published inside them if there's a value that exists. The problem is, though, we have to understand that the value is conditional. Because if blog doesn't exist, I don't want to put the value in, right? Now, I'm not going to duplicate all of these fields because that's ridiculous and not very dry, and I might as well have just created an edit form if I was going to do that. So instead, I'm going to use a very powerful little one-liner conditional piece of logic that exists in so many programming languages. Does anybody know what that wonderful conditional piece of logic is called? Adrian's smiling. I'm assuming he knows what it's called. It starts with a T. Ternary. We're going to use a ternary. And what you will find when you work with templating languages, you will use ternaries so much, it's not even funny. Like a ridiculous amount, you will use ternaries. All right, so the first one, under the title, we'll add a comma after required, right? We'll say value equals, and I like to put my ternaries in a set of parentheses just to keep them nice and clean. So I'm going to put a set of parentheses in there. And my ternary goes like this. Blog? Right? Are you there? Blog? If so, where's your title at? Let's go see that title. Otherwise, null. That's all we need to do. Null. If there's no value, the cool thing about HTML is if it has no value, if it's null, it won't even render the attribute, which is good. The content is a little bit different because text area doesn't have a value. It just has a nested whatever, right? Nested info. So on the next line, nested into text area, we're going to use equals. And this time we don't need to use the parentheses at all because there's nothing next to it to make it goofy. This is going to be blog.content or null. Status gets a little bit more complicated. Because status is a select box and you only want to select the currently selected status, there's a little bit of logic there. And we want to avoid duplication, right? Maybe in the future we might have more statuses than just draft or publish, though I can't think of any off the top of my head, but we may. You never know. So because of that, it would be really nice to dry up this logic and make it so that we can easily give it a new status and just have it work without really too much effort. So the way we're going to do that, we're going to take these two options that are in here right now, and we're going to remove them entirely. Goodbye, options. Next, we're going to use Pugs Iterator. Pug has an iterator called each, and what each does is it will iterate over an array, and it does basically the same thing as a for of loop. It iterates over the array, takes the value, dumps it into a throwaway variable, and makes that available to you in the block, right? So we're going to have each, and we're going to make up a variable name. I'm going to call it status because that makes sense. The only slight oddity in this logic is it's status in and not status of, right? So it's a little bit off, but whatever. So it's status in, and then I'm just going to hard code the array. Draft or published. So what that's going to do is the first time it iterates, it's going to check draft. The second time it iterates, it's going to check published. The next thing we want to do is we want to give it the options, right? So we're going to do option. And this is quite a lengthy line of logic. So hopefully you'll follow along. First, you're going to have the value equal to whatever the status is that comes back. So status. Next, we're going to actually toggle selected. So selected, like required, it's like a single name attribute. However, in Pug, if you do selected equals true, it toggles it on. If you do selected equals false, it toggles it off. Okay? So we can actually use that to our advantage to go selected equals, all in one line, and then a set of brackets, and we're going to write a ternary statement here. First, is there a blog? And double ampersand, is the blog status equal to the status passed by the array? And that is obviously a question. Actually, I have way too much logic here. We're going to do this in a very small way. Just back that up. That's all you need. If blog is defined, it will be true. And if blog status equals status, it will be true. If it doesn't equal status, that whole expression will return false. If it is true, it's actually going to return back the status, which doesn't really matter. That turns it on anyways. That's all it cares about. If there is no blog, it's false. So we're actually going to use the conditional logic to our advantage. There's no reason for us to write a ternary if all we're going to do is return true and false. This already returns true or false. So we'll just do that. Nice shorthand. Next, at the very end of this thing, no, let's clean this up so it looks a little nicer. We'll do an equal sign on the next line. This is the actual word, the label you see in the dropdown. Now you have to remember that status is in capital letters, so why don't we make status lowercase? So we'll just use the wonderful to lowercase JavaScript function that gets run on strings. I'm just doing laps. Laps around the networking room. Told her to switch again. I fucking dare you. No, just kidding. All right, so that's it. Our submit button is fine. Everything else is fine. This should work. I mean, if we jump over to Google Chrome, we'll see. Is anybody still typing this out? Missing anything? No? Good? Cool. Let's jump over to Chrome. Refresh. Ta-da! We've got stuff in there. Now the thing is though, is we want to make sure that this draft is either draft or actual published. So I'm just going to go over to my published blogs. I'm going to click edit, and sure enough, status changed. Yeah, yes. But the wonderful thing is if I change this to draft and I hit submit, nothing happens. Well, it does. It actually creates a whole brand new published blog. There's a reason why. If we jump back over, does anybody know what the issue could potentially be in this scenario?
Still using
Yeah, we're posting to the wrong location. That's the problem. Unfortunately, we don't have put, which is what I think you're thinking of. But we don't have put, but we definitely need to make sure we post to the correct location. So what we can do is use our wonderful ternary up here, right? And actually return back whatever it is that we want based on the current thing. So again, this is simple as checking blog. Does blog exist? Because if blog exists, then I'm going to return back blogs update. Otherwise, I'm going to return back blurgs. Blogs don't write blurgs. The method stays the same. Now, unfortunately, in Node Express, the only way you can get put and delete as actual HTTP methods is by adding in a whole other component and a whole bunch of configuration that is quite tricky. It's a lot easier when we start working with React. It becomes a lot simpler. So we're just going to leave it at post and get for now. However, we will handle our actual destroy with a proper post. I'll show you how to do that. Cool. So now we should be able to create an actual update. So if we jump back over to our Google Chrome and we click edit on this published blog and change it to draft and hit submit, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, I don't have blog/update because I don't have that route yet. Never created it, right? So I get the error. So let's do that step next. Jump over to Visual Studio Code, go to blogs.js. Let's create a new route, route.post, and that's just going to go to update. That will point to our blogs controller as all of our routes do, and that's going to point to update. Once we have that, we can actually write the update logic. Is anybody behind? Just no? Okay. Go over to blogs controller, scroll down to where it says update. And interestingly enough, part of this, there's a few different ways we could do this. We could actually go and find that blog and then change its properties and then resave. That's one way we could do it. But I'd much rather use the actual method that is made for this particular process, which is called update1. So that's what we're going to do. So we access our blog, right? Our blog model. We call the method update1. Update1 takes an argument, which goes in a set of curly braces. And this is probably the most annoying thing about Mongoose. It has to be the attribute that you want to search by verbatim. So exactly as it is in the database, which is ID, but ID starts with an underscore. So that's probably the most annoying thing about Mongoose. There might be a better way to do that, and if anybody knows it, please let me know. And then the ID is not on our params because params are sent through our URL, right? It's actually a part of our post body. So to access it, we do request.body, which is short for our post body, .id, because that was its name. Now the second argument this method takes is the actual data we want to change. And the way that data is usually formatted, it's an object with attributes with values. And just like we did with post, where we had them all nicely bundled underneath the word blog, because we formatted it that way in our form, we're going to get that same benefit now, where we don't actually have to split it out into an object. We can just simply pass in request.body.blog. Update 1 takes a third argument, but it is completely optional to you. The third argument basically tells Mongoose on how to process this data. So one particular thing we want to do, for example, title, right? We require that the title is set. That's a requirement. If you don't tell Mongoose to run the validation, it won't. Which means if the user was to clear out the title and resave, they would get away with it because the validators wouldn't run. They'd be able to completely write it without a title. So we want to force validation so that that doesn't happen. In order to do that, we have to pass another object as the third argument. And the value, run validators, and set that to true. So that's probably one of the biggest queries we've run so far in Mongoose. I don't think we've run anything quite that size yet. We still have the two wonderful then and catch pieces that we still have to fill out. So .then, .catch, like so. .then, we'll just do a empty callback. And all we're going to do is redirect. So that's common practice. After you've done a post, you redirect. And the reason why you redirect is because if you don't and you instead render the view, they can essentially refresh the view and basically rewrite the whole post as a brand new entry into the database. So if they were like spam refresh, they would write multiple versions of that into the database and have a ton of duplication. By redirecting, we've changed state. We've forced the browser to change state, and because that blog post will not persist across the state, it's gone. So now if they click refresh, it doesn't matter. We don't care. They can. So we're going to do a res.redirect. And redirect's cool. We just have to point it at a view, whatever view we want, or a path. So we're going to point it at a path. We're going to point it at blogs. And then last but not least, let's just copy the error from above because it's basically the same and dump that into the catch. And that is our complete update. So a few more lines, 10 lines as opposed to like 6 or 5. A few more, but important none the same. Once again, the first line, the first argument is our filter. It's what basically helps us find the blog post that we want to actually update. The second argument is the data that we want to update, which is passed as an object. However, because body parser is already rendering our form post as an object, all we have to do is pass the blog. And then the third argument is any processing you want to happen on that query before you enter it into the database. Okay? Then we have our then and then our catch. So now we're completely ready. We can actually go ahead, jump over to our Google Chrome. Is anybody still typing that out before I switch? No? Okay, we're going to switch over, go back to our blog post, and all I'm going to do is take my published blog. I'm going to say change to published. I'm going to change the status over to published, like so, and I'm going to click submit. And if everything worked, it will actually change it to published, and you can see that that's exactly what's happened. It's changed over to publish. Just to make sure that that's correct, I'm going to take test and change it to publish as well. And I changed this thing. Hit submit. And yeah, it's working as well. It's now published. So, our CRUD operations, create, read, and update. Now we need delete, right? Delete is really small, so it's fairly easy for us to add. However, the actual form logic, or sorry, not form logic, the actual thing to click so that you can delete something is a little bit longer. I want you to go over to your index.pug. And just after the A here, we're going to do, this is going to look really goofy, but it's required because the pipe character means something to Pug, so it will blow up unless we do it that way, unless we just spit it out as a string. So I'm going to have edit, pipe, delete, essentially. So the delete, because delete is a manipulating process, I want to do it as a post. And what you will find is that many people do this very lazily and do it as a get because they don't really want to write it out, right? But it's manipulating, it's mutating data. So because it's mutating data, it should always be done through a post request. Frameworks like Rails and Laravel and CodeIgniter all practice this process, but they wrap it in a helper and make it super easy for you. So you write it like a link, it's actually called link to. You write it like a link, it looks like a link, but you set a method on it of delete. And the second you do that, instead of just producing an A tag and setting it up like that, it actually converts it into a form. You just don't see it because it styles it so that it's like a link. So that's essentially what we're going to do. We're going to create a form and style it like a link so that it looks just like any other link. So the way we do this, we're going to start with the word form, and we're going to give it a class so that we can style it easily. And we're going to call it destroy. In the parentheses, we're going to define two attributes, action and method. Action, we're going to point it at some backticks here. Action is going to go to blogs, destroy, not destory, destroy, there we go. And then the method is going to point to post. Inside here, we need two inputs. One, we need a hidden field in order to carry our identifier to the destroy operation. And then the second piece we'll need is just a button to click, right? Like a submit button. So we're going to do input, type is equal to hidden, name is equal to, why do I do stuff like this? ID, it's really weird. And value is equal to some backticks, $. Why am I doing that? You don't need that. You just need blog.id. I don't know why I'm making that a lot harder than it needs to be. And then in here, we're going to do input. And input's also going to, nope, input is not going to have that. Just input, type equals submit. And the value will equal the word we want to show up, which we're going to call delete, not destroy, delete. Oh, we definitely need to do it. It's going to bother me if we don't. Why don't we add an onSubmit handler that will actually listen when we go to submit the form. It will return back a prompt. That way we can actually prompt the user that this is what they want to do. Take us not even 5 seconds to write it. So it's literally comma, the actual event we want to listen to, which is onSubmit, which has to go on the form itself, equals, and then this is where our logic's going to go, but our logic needs to go inside a set of quote characters, unfortunately. And the onSubmit is going to go like this. It will be return, confirm, with a set of brackets. Inside the set of brackets, you need a string. Are you absolutely, positively sure you want to permanently, that's not how you spell permanent. Permanently, that's not either, whatever. I want to permanently delete this blog. There you go. So now when you click it, it should come up and tell you, are you absolutely sure you want to delete this? You don't have to write out that big long string. You can be like, you sure? Or just a question mark given. Just like a. All right. Now that we've got all that, we'll need the controller action in order to handle the destroy. And the controller action is quite similar to this, to the update, but we don't actually need all the we only need the filter. We don't need all the rest of it. So if you jump over to your blogs controller, your blurgs controller, is anybody still typing out the form? Okay. The rest of you can head over to the blurgs controller.
You know the hotkey is to wrap text?
To wrap text. No, I don't, but I do know if you go to View, toggle word wrap. And it actually tells you the hotkey
Yeah.
too. Which I think that's Control Z.
Alt Z on Windows.
Is it Alt Z?
Alt Z on Windows.
It's Alt Z on, yeah. Well, it's Option Z on Mac. But Alt. I have a little Alt button above it. Okay, so there we go. So now, if we jump over to our blogs controller, under Destroy, let's open that guy up. Access our blog model. And this command that we're going to run is called delete one. And the reason why we're using update one and delete one is because it will only allow one to be deleted. Even if it matches with 10,000, it will only ever delete a singular record, which is definitely better than accidentally deleting 10,000 records, right? But so we do delete one. It takes that crazy underscore ID, and we're going to get it from requestBody.id. We're going to give it the .then and the .catch. Then we'll just do an anonymous, empty anonymous function. And we'll just do a redirect to blogs. And then the catch, it's literally the same silly error logic we've been doing up to this point. And save it. So what this is going to do is find the record, delete that record entirely, permanently. You cannot get it back once it's deleted. And then it's going to redirect to our blogs, which should update with our current change, right? I mean, it happens so fast it almost seems like a single-page app, but it's not. This. Then, after that, we're going to do a catch just in case there's an error, and we'll spit the error out to the console. Right now, we are missing something, though. We have the view. We have the controller action. We're missing the third piece. What's the third piece? One word, yeah, okay. Route. Jump over to blogs.js. Literally duplicate that line and change those two words from update to destroy. All right. Just one thing before we move. I just want to check that we did make that. Yes, we did. Okay, blogs destroy. That's totally what we want. All right. So now when we navigate there, it's going to take us there. But there's going to be a slight issue. If we jump over to our browser and we refresh, we're going to notice now we have this wonderful delete button that looks really not good, right? It does not match the rest of the format of our page. So why don't we go over to our styles real fast. And we're actually going to add a very small block of styling. So .destroy display inline. So first of all, that's going to take our destroy form and it's going to display it inline, so it comes in line with the rest of our stuff. Next, we're going to do .destroy arrow input square brackets type equals submit. So that will grab the submit button that's in our form. We're going to do margin 0, padding 0 just to reset everything out, background none, border none. I wrote 0. Maybe it is 0. And then the color, to make it the same color as the link, will be hashtag 007 and your best BFF. Or you can read that as 007 is your best BFF. Right. That's a Bootstrap color. I didn't make that color up. Next, I want to do a hover effect. So I'm going to do destroy hover and point at the input type equals submit. And what I'm going to do with this is when you hover over that thing, it's going to actually change it out with the other color. It's just going to put an underline actually underneath it. Text, decoration, underline. And then save that. And when I save, for some reason, it likes to take the angle and shove it right up against the preceding word. It's kind of annoying. And now that we're done that, you should be able to jump over to your browser, hit refresh, and it should clean it up, and it should look fine. Anybody still typing out those styles? No? All right, let's jump over, Command R, and there we go. Looks just the same as the edit button. There's no difference, except for the hover color is slightly different. That's super annoying. We can fix it. Right-click on Edit, hit Inspect, and we need to actually force it to be hovered on, which we can actually just toggle the state to hover. There we go. And then grab this, pull it up, and we can grab this color here. I mean, you can just watch me do that and then copy the color that I write down. So under hover, we need to change our color to 0056B3. And then save it. Do you wear glasses now?
No, but I should. Gotta make eye exam soon.
Once you've done that, go ahead back to your browser, just refresh. And now when you go over delete, yep, delete and edit look exactly the same. So now what's cool, because those styles are under .destroy, every form you create, as long as you put a .destroy class on it, it will immediately abide by this. So it will look and function like a link. So there'll be no difference to the user. All right, let's delete something. I want to delete a whole bunch of things. Delete. Are you absolutely positively sure you want to permanently delete this blog? Cancel. I didn't delete it. Are you absolutely sure? Yes. Okay, it's gone. Delete. Yep. Delete. Yep. Delete. Yep. Let's edit this one. Published. Submit. It's published now. Cool. We got CRUD. We've done CRUD. That's all of the CRUD that you need to do. So, last thing. Get rid of all those. Flash messaging. Flash messaging, pretty much a methodology that's used in almost all frameworks. What it is it's a way for you to communicate a notification to your user. So you think about the notifications that happen in a CRUD system, right? When I create a new record, I get a notification back telling me that I've created a new record, right? So let's think about that from like adding a product to a cart. When you add a product to a cart, that's creating a new record, and you get a thing back saying you've added this product to your cart, right? That notification you get back is a flash message. The reason why flash messages are so interesting is because flash messages aren't done they aren't done from state to state. You have to understand that because the client is stateless, there's some way that you have to carry that message from one action in one state over to potentially a new state, right? Because you're fine as long as we go to controller and we render the view, that's fine. We actually haven't changed state when that happens. So you're totally fine. And you can easily pass a message through the locals to the view. But when we go and create something, or we update something, or we destroy something, we change state because we redirect the user back to the view. The second we do the redirect, we're creating a whole brand new request cycle, which means that message is gone. The second we hit the new request cycle, that message no longer carries its way through. We lose it somewhere, and once we get to the final endpoint, we no longer have the actual flash message to show the user. So in order to make sure that we have that flash message through that whole cycle process, we use a combination of sessions and cookies. And sessions and cookies will allow us to keep this thing in storage temporarily, get to our endpoint, show it to the user, then clear it and get rid of it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use sessions and cookies to do this, but we actually wind up, kind of killing two birds with one stone, because we also need sessions and cookies to handle authentication in the future. So we're going to need them anyways, which is literally next week. So we're going to install sessions and cookies today, add flash messaging, which will be a quick process, and then next week we'll already have those two components in place for when we're ready to start our actual authentication piece. So the first place we're going to start out at actually is not there. The first place we're going to start out at is in the terminal. So go ahead and terminate your application, Control-C. All right? That's across the board, Linux, Mac, Windows, Control-C. And there's 3 new libraries we're installing. So npm install express-session is the first one. And we can actually install all 3 of these in a row. Hit space, cookie-parser, space, connect-flash. So just make sure you put spaces in between each of the libraries. Once that's done, go ahead and hit enter. It's going to go and fetch stuff, install stuff, update stuff, and shove stuff in packages. So it's express-session, cookie-parse, and connect-flash. Now, obviously, all 3 of these we're going to have to register with our application. And where do we register every new module? App.js, right? It's like our main entry points where all of our configuration logic winds up in the end. So go ahead and jump over to your IDE, open up your app.js file, and let's get to registering. So this is all going to go after where we do const app equals express. This is where all of this logic is going to go. So I'm going to add a new thing saying adding cookies and sessions support to our app. There's about 25 lines here, 15 lines. We got it right? So the first one will be the cookie parser. So const cookie parser written in camel case equals require the cookie dash parser. That's the first one. The second one will be our express session, but we're just going to call it session. So we'll do const session equals require string express session. Why is this having... I love how it like freaks out. It's like, you've defined this thing, but you haven't used it. Well, of course I haven't. I just started typing it. Like, just give me a second to leave the page before you start freaking out. And then the last one is the flash. Const flash equals require connect-flash. So all three of our libraries that we're going to work with sessions and flashes. And when we do our bcrypt and start doing our authentication, it will wind up going in the same block. Next piece, we want to tell the app to use the cookie parser. So use cookie parser, and that's just a function call. Then we're going to tell the app to use the session, and that's a function call as well, but it takes an argument, and that argument is an object. Actually, it takes 2, 3, 4, no, 1, just 1. It's broken into a couple of objects, that's why. All right, so the first piece is the secret. So sessions will actually give you an encrypted string back that says this session is a part of this unique ID, and that's so people can't just hijack your session and like take it over and become you. So what we do is we create this session, but the express session actually requires you to have a salt key. What a salt key essentially does is you get an encrypted key, and then it takes the salt key, it appends it on, and it re-encrypts it and gives it back to you. So unless you know the salt key, as well as the original 256-bit encryption, there's no chance of you really hijacking it, unless you do like a man-in-the-middle attack or something and hijack it in between a request. But it's very hard for you to just guess. You can't guess the session, right? This is too difficult. So we're going to do the secret first, which is a property. And I'm going to throw a set of parentheses in here because we're going to perform a slight little bit of logic. I'm going to do either process.env.secret, which will be defined by my Heroku instance or whatever I'm using, or whatever random salt word you want to make up. It's literally whatever you want to make up. It can be an expression, it can be a phrase, whatever you want it to be. I'm going to make mine boo raka cha, just because I like that word, even though I don't know what it means. I think you're thinking of like cowabunga or something like that. All right, and then cookie. All my surfer lingo that I know came from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. All right, cookie. Cookie is equal to an object. And that object is going to have one property in it, and that's the age of the cookie, which I'm going to set to 10,000, sorry, what is it? 1 million, or is that 10 million? 10,800,000. And that's milliseconds, that's why. So I wish they wouldn't do time that way. I wish they would do time in seconds when it comes to expiry instead of milliseconds. It's really weird. And it's important that that's long because when you do password encryption, you want to make sure your password has a potential chance to carry between sessions. You don't want to have to reset the password every 20 minutes or 30 minutes because that's really annoying, right? So the way it works is the cookie will maintain through one request. So as long as you have enough of a timeout that you can get from request to request, it will just keep resetting that time over and over again on each request. All right, so after that, we want to do a resave, true. That's what's resaving. That's what actually restarts the cookie each time. And then save uninitialized, and we're going to set that to true. And basically what that does is if you don't currently have a session, it will create a session and save it for you, which is what you want. So basically every single user that comes to our site, they now get a session associated with them, which you could use for logging as well. You could log IP addresses. That's kind of how you deal with like people that are trying to brute force their way. You can actually capture their IP addresses and then start blacklisting them and stuff like that. But usually that's done at the server level. It's not usually done here. But you can do it here. Maybe you don't have server access. After that, we're ready to register the actual Flash piece. So we do app.use and we just call Flash. And then I've created a handy little helper for us for the Flash. But I think I did steal this just from the internet, so it's not like it's brand new or anything. I think I had one before, but it was complex. This is app.use. And this is going to take an anonymous function, and that anonymous function has 3 arguments. It gets the request object, the response object, and an object that you guys are not seeing so far called next. The purpose of next, what next will do is the request will pass through this thing, including the response. Both objects will pass through. Next says, you're not done here, continue on to the next location for your request. So it will go through here and then continue on to another point. If we don't call next, it stops there and it just finishes off there, right? But we want it to go through there and continue on. Every request we have will go through this object. Every single request made will come through this object, okay? So we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to write some locals, and we're going to store it under a property called Flash. And it's going to be equal to any locals that we had before, or an empty object. Then we're going to add the locals, flash dot success, so it's 3 properties in, and we're going to make it equal to flash success pieces or null. And then the same thing, res.locals.flash.error, and it will be equal to request.flash error or null. And then last but not least, we call next. So what essentially is happening here, we are taking the response that we get back from the controller that has any flash messages. If there's any flash messages on it, we're going to take those flash messages and assign them to this flash message. If there's successful flash messages, we'll assign those. If there's errors, we'll assign those. If there's already an existing set of locals, we'll just carry them on through. That's what we're basically doing with that. Next, we need to actually go back into our blocks controller and update our controller actions to use the request flash to make this more human readable for our users. But before I do that, let me just make sure we have the whole thing in view. Is anybody still typing that whole big conglomerate out? No? Okay, cool. Go ahead and open up your blocks controller. And we might as well start at the create. So these things will only really show up anywhere we have, like right here actually, on index. We need to do it on index as well because we may have an issue with index. So I think what we'll do with index, I actually don't have this written down. We'll have the error, but we'll get rid of the console log part of it. And we'll just have it point to an empty block. And then in the block, what we will do is we will set a flash error. And for now, we'll just pass whatever error we get through. We can always resolve it so it's a little bit more human readable in the future. Usually the mongoose errors that you will get back will be this record doesn't exist or there's an issue with this error. And then we want to redirect somewhere. And I think the best place to redirect is not back to the index page, right? We should go back to home where we're not doing any mongoose calls. And then the error can render on the home page. So essentially what will happen is user tries to go to the index page, something breaks, we redirect them back to the home page and show them an error message. We don't need to do one on new because we're not doing anything on new that's going to throw an error. So there's no reason for us to do one on new. On show though, show we want to do the same thing. It's literally the same block, so let's just copy the block we did under index, and we'll just paste it in show. And we will go back to the same location we did before. Actually, we should probably return back to index. That kind of makes a bit more sense to me. So let's go to blogs. /blogs. Because that's likely how they got to that page, was by clicking through. All right. This one will actually involve two. We will have a successful response and a negative response, right? So if we attempt to create the blog and everything works out fine, we might as well tell them, request flash success, your new blog was created successfully. And then if they have an error, let's just copy and paste the error we did before, because it will literally be the same. And we can do one step slightly better. If they have an error because maybe they didn't pass their title through, we don't want them to start with an empty form on new because that's a really crappy user experience. We want to return the form back to them, right? In order to do that, though, we would actually have to render the form, which we can do. So we'll change this from redirect to render. We'll change that from blogs to new. We'll add in a locals object. We'll give it a blog. And we will literally just pass back request.body.blog. And what that will do is, remember our form, if there is a blog present, it will populate the fields with it. So what we're doing is we're rendering new, but we're giving it a blog post, so it will populate the fields with the blog post. We need one more local. We need the title. New blog. That is a very good user experience. It's a nice, clean user experience. Drafts is going to be the same as index, so we might as well just run up to index, or any of them that has an error in it. Capture the error. Come to drafts, and replace the error with that error. And same with published. I'll actually just do both of them at the same time. Because they'll both be the same. And we'll just send them back to the regular index. And then index will handle it if there's any error at index. Edit will be the same as well. The only issue will be if it doesn't find a blog post, so you can paste that same error message there. And we'll send them back to blogs because that's where they would have clicked error. But update is going to be slightly different because like create, it's going to have to deal with that whole issue of if there's an error, how do I deal with it? So why don't we jump up to create. We'll grab the success messages from create, come back down to update, and we will replace what's in update with them. And then your blog was updated successfully, and then return back to blogs. And I'll give you a second to finish that up because the error message will be robust. The error is going to have to be handled almost the exact same way as new was, or as create was. So you might as well go grab the error logic from create. So just go up to where create is, this error block that's in here. I mean, you could just always just grab the whole catch statement. That's probably the easiest way to do that. Grab the whole catch statement. It's kind of hard to match up the things. Once you have the catch statement, jump back down to update and just replace its catch statement with that one. You're not going to render new, you're going to render edit. And this title should be the same title that we pass in the edit one. So if you run up to edit, I mean, this is the easiest way to move back and forth is just copy and paste stuff that you find, right? There we go, edit. I'm just going to copy this title right from here. Come back down here and replace this title with it. Which, whoops, got too many property types. There. So what's going to happen in that scenario, if we get an error, it's going to go back to edit. I don't know why I capitalized it. It's going to go back to edit, and it's going to render it. However, it's not going to go to the correct location. I've got an error there. We need to, in the link to render. No, that's correct. No, I'm wrong. Sorry. It's blogs edit, actually, that we want to render. We need to correct the one under create as well. Wasn't paying attention to that. We redirect to paths, we render views. So the view being rendered is blogs edit there. And then under create, make sure you fix that one as well because it's incorrect as well. All right, so I did that under update, under create. If you come up to create, same thing. It's not /new, it's blogs/new. So it renders the correct one. We're so close. The only problem we have now is that we have all this wonderful logic in here. Actually, we have one more piece to do. And its logic is very similar to all the rest of them. It's going to res direct to blogs, but we're going to have a success message in there. So we will do a request.flash success. Your blog was deleted successfully. And we'll just direct them back to blogs. That way it just disappears. Then under the catch, if it doesn't work, it's still just a simple process of sending them back to blogs. So we will do the same logic that we do under edit. Copy its response and paste it into here. And then those are all of our Flash messages. So quite a few. So the next thing is we need a view in order to see those Flash messages show up, right? Otherwise, there's no way for us to know what they are because they will get hidden as well, and not to mention there's nothing to display them. So the way we're going to do the view, we're going to do it as a partial because that makes the most amount of sense. So if you open up your sidebar, go to Views, go to Partials, right-click and choose to create a new file, and you're going to call this flash.pug. Your view logic is extremely simple. First, you want to make sure there actually is a view, so you're going to do if flash. Right? So do I actually have any Flash notifications? Because if I do, then I want to render them. If I don't care. Right? I don't want to do anything. I'm going to put this under a Flash div because I need to actually modify it in my styles so it actually shows up in the correct location. It needs to be moved down 60 pixels from the header, otherwise it will be buried. Then I'm going to say if flash dot success dot length, meaning there's more than one. However, this is not built that way. Alert dot alert success. Oh, interesting. This is also string interpolation, but this is really interesting. It's done with the hashtags. I'm not doing it that way because that looks super confusing. Flash.success.join. And we're going to join with a new line character so they immediately get pushed to the second line, second line, second line. So we do that by just passing in the new line character. And then if you want, literally just copy those two lines. But this one is not successes we're looking for. It is error. Error. But the alert is not alert success, it's alert danger. Danger, Will Robinson. Obviously, when we're done that, we need to add it somewhere, so it makes the most amount of sense to just include it in our main page. I would recommend including it under your nav. If you want to include it above your nav, that's totally fine, but then you're going to have to change the way you style it because you're going to have to push the nav down. Somehow you'll have to push the nav down, which would be a lot harder than just putting it underneath the nav. So to do that, you just open up your main.pug view. And under the main nav, you're going to include ..partials/flash.pug. And then once you're done that, you're going to jump over to your style sheet, styles.css, and you're going to add a .flash. And it's literally just margin top is 60 pixels, and that's it. I'll shove it down below the thing. And then if there's anything else below it, they will immediately be pushed by 60 pixels as well. So there's a couple ways we can test this to make sure it works. The first thing we want to do is to jump over to Google Chrome. And I mean, we can just delete something. That's like probably the easiest way to test. Are you absolutely positively? Yep, okay. I get the site you can't be reached. Likely I have an error. Oh, it's not even running. Make sure your server's running. Because if your server's not running, then it won't work. Let's try that again. Delete. Okay. Boom. Your blog post was deleted successfully. And if you refresh, that message goes away. So it only lasts for one complete state path round, like one complete circle. The second it's viewed, it's done. It gets removed. So you don't have to worry about them just like stockpiling. All right. If you want to edit, you can go ahead and edit something. Blog post, ever. Hit submit. Your blog was updated successfully. Now I imagine you want to see what happens if we kind of like throw a monkey wrench into it and cause it to fail. Part of the problem right now, if I don't pass a title, then it will throw an error, right? Because we have to have a title as part of our validation. If I click submit, Chrome kicks in and says, oh, no. You've got like some client-side validation to deal with. I can actually disable that. If I right-click on this thing, not add block, inspect, it takes me to the input here. There's required. That's the attribute. This is how easy it is to hack a form. Boom, form hacked. Now I can submit this to my heart's content. Submit. Uh-oh, things have happened. It is mad, but I'm not getting my error back. So that likely means that we have a logic problem somewhere. So if we go to here, that's the best place to start to figure out where our problem is. It says blog with lowercase letters is not defined. So that means I've likely called it blog with lowercase letters somewhere. So it's in my blogs controller, it said on line 108. Yeah. The reason is because this is the blog. It's updated through here. I don't have blog down here. That's not a thing. I need to do request.body.title or .body.blog.title down there. That's the only blog I currently have available to me. Now I'm guessing I've made that mistake somewhere else as well. But we'll know in a minute because we'll try this on create as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We just added this line on line 14. Maybe you're missing the style. That was it? All right, cool. All right, so make sure in blogs controller on line 108, under in exports update, you change that title, so it's request.body.blog.title. It's a mouthful. It's a lot of properties. All right, now if I jump back, I'm going to click submit on this, and it's going to give me an error, right? Go in, hack my form, hackety hack, submit, and it came back to the blog post. It repopulated it, but I didn't get my actual error message out. I'm not sure why. There is a flash there, though, which means it definitely saw it and put it in. Oh, I see why. It's hidden. It's also empty, which means for whatever reason, the request flash post didn't actually pass through. It's also possible this is empty, this error message. Let's try it on create just to see if that's the case. So we can jump over to the create a new blog post. New blog. Dark and stormy. Army glormy. Go. I'm going to publish that. That's a masterpiece right there. So if we're going to get rid of dark and stormy, I'm going to be an evil hacker. Hackety hack. Don't come back. There we go. I'm going to click submit. And we're back, and it still keeps our content there, which is what we wanted, but we're not getting the flash message, and I'm not sure why. I'll have to actually investigate that. I honestly don't know why it's not returning back the flash message. It will if we definitely type in the name, though, and hit submit. Oh, it redirected me to the edit page for some reason. Yeah, we've got some issues. I'll take a look at those on my own time and I'll fix them up, and then I'll release a video if it's anything drastic or if it's nothing you can cover in class. But in that, it looks like everything's basically working. So now you've got CRUD, you've got a semi 50% done flash messaging system. That's a good point to stop. Next week, because we'll already have sessions and cookies, we'll be able to do the password authentication. We're going to do very simple password authentication. Some of you may have heard of Passport. We're not using Passport because it's a lot more complex with Passport. We're just going to simply do a bcrypt encryption. So we'll do that next week. Other than that, have a great night. That's it.